Welcome to the Mount Pleasant podcast, featuring discussions and interviews about the people, places, and events that make Mount Pleasant such a special place. This is a special episode of Mount Pleasant Podcast, where we interview people who've helped make Mount Pleasant a community residents love to call home.
Each month, I get the privilege, the honor to talk with some of Mount Pleasant's best. And on the Mount Pleasant podcast today, a very special Growing with Mount Pleasant episode, as we look to introduce you to a business that maybe you're not familiar with. But at the end of our conversation, you'll be definitely traveling to see our friends at Wild Birds Unlimited. I'm Brian Cleary, and Danielle Motley is the store owner. Danielle, spring is here. We're feeling good about that. Let's first of all talk about you and the store. The inspiration for you to own Wild Birds Unlimited, where did that come from?
So I actually started working at Wild Birds Unlimited when I was just 18 years old. I was looking for a job, and as soon as I walked into the store, it sounds cheesy, but I think it was just love at first sight. I mean, the store had fountains running, bird songs were playing, and it just felt like you were stepping into nature. And then with my time there, the love only grew. The customers were amazing. They all came in excited and happy to feed their birds. I put up my first feeder, which was a window feeder, in my small apartment, and it was a game changer. I mean, those birds brought me so much joy in a place that I didn't particularly love. And so my desire to help other people experience that same thing just kept going.
Is there a way for you to explain? Obviously, you went to Wild Birds Unlimited and started working there, but you wouldn't have got in the store if you hadn't liked birds. My wife loves birds. How do you explain to the non-bird loving people what the thrill, the excitement, what's so good about birding?
I think, first of all, people really just want to connect to nature and be a part of something bigger, which is what you get to do when you feed the birds. The seasons change, and with that, activity changes. And so I think that being able to watch the birds in their backyard just do their thing and change with the seasons is just so inspiring.
Now, the first time I was in Wild Birds Unlimited was actually when it was in the location in the plaza across from Moultrie Middle School. Wild Birds Unlimited, not there anymore. For people who haven't maybe been in the store lately, where can I find you?
Yeah, so we relocated a couple years ago. We're at 1117 Market Center Boulevard, but that is right next to the Lowe's near Town Center. So most people find it's a lot more central and convenient for them to come visit us there than we were before.
So Danielle, let's start here. I'm new to birding. I want to get involved. I want to make it part of my life. Let me start with some of the mistakes that people make. What are some of the pitfalls? Give me some things that I really don't want to do.
I think immediately when people come into our store who have already put up a feeder, they're a little discouraged by the mess that it brings and the critters that mess also brings. We really like to help people pick out the perfect food for their backyard that's not going to cause a mess, that's going to bring in a lot of beautiful birds, and also feeders and different tools that we have to help keep that critter activity down as well. I think those are the two things that discourage people the most when they first get started.
I have honestly never heard of this until I went on your website. No mess seeds. It sounds wonderful. What are no mess seeds?
Yeah, so our no mess blends are our most popular, but they're completely shelled seeds, which appeal to a wider variety of birds because even the birds that don't shell seeds, like insect eaters, bluebirds, Carolina wrens, they will come to a no mess blend. But in addition, you don't have to worry about that mess under the feeders, no weeds, no extra debris, which can also help cut down on those unwanted critters as well.
Unwanted critters, you can't be referring to squirrels, are you? No, squirrels and birding don't seem to go together.
See, I personally love the squirrels, and we have lots of customers that do. I think that we enjoy kind of encouraging people to feed them on the side of your yard and not directly with your bird feeders, because they can go through that bird seed pretty quickly. And ultimately, you kind of put up a bird feeder to attract birds. Yes, squirrels, raccoons, sometimes deer, those can all be things that people didn't consider that also really love the bird seed.
In 1982, it was East Cooper Magazine. Now it's Mount Pleasant Magazine. Mount Pleasant Magazine is about the people, places, and events that make Mount Pleasant a great place to live, work, and raise a family. Your community, your magazine. Mount Pleasant Magazine.
You're listening to the Mount Pleasant Podcast.
This is a special edition of the Mount Pleasant Podcast today with me, Brian Cleary, where the pages of Mount Pleasant Magazine come alive. We're growing with Mount Pleasant and talking with and about a great Mount Pleasant business, Wild Birds Unlimited. Danielle Motley is the owner of Wild Birds Unlimited. They are in the Mount Pleasant Town Center by the Lowe's, and we're talking about birding, and this is the perfect time of year for that because it is spring. Some new species of birds may be into the area. Danielle, can you tell me maybe what's a one or two unique birds that you've experienced in Mount Pleasant that maybe you were surprised by?
I think that people are most surprised by painted buntings. We get several calls each spring of people thinking that someone's pet bird has escaped. These birds look like a rainbow, and they call Mount Pleasant home from the spring all the way through early fall. They love to eat white millet seed, and they particularly like that seed in a tube feeder with a cage around it. So if you're really looking to attract those very cool birds, that would be the best way to do it.
So, Danielle, I've read for spring a couple of times, and you mentioned the seasons and stuff. So is this really a good time to start? If I'm going to make my first visit to Wild Birds Unlimited, does it need to be in the spring, or can it really be anytime?
No, you can feed the birds year round. Around here, our winters are milder. They never really need our food. It's always supplemental and enjoyable for us and them. But you can start feeding the birds any time of year. Spring just happens to be a very exciting time to do it.
For you personally, is there a bird that for example, my wife feeds wrens. She loves cardinals. Other people, maybe a hummingbird. Do you yourself have a preference in terms of, the bird that I really want to attract is?
So this question I do get asked a lot, and there's just no way to choose your favorite bird. Right now, we have bluebirds nesting in the backyard, and so I'm very distracted watching them, and they never get old. And of course, those painted buntings are such a treat, so I'm always trying to attract more of them.
So I can go back to a time, and I'm going to date myself a little bit, but I remember when feeding the birds was getting a loaf of bread, tearing it apart, and throwing it out. Obviously, in 2026, that's not how we're feeding birds.
That is true. I remember doing that as a child as well. But studies have shown that bread does not have nutritional value for the birds, including your ducks and geese. So we want to avoid feeding them that. We also want to avoid any seed blends that have like cereal, grains, corn. Those types of things are usually fillers and have a tendency to mold really quickly, especially in our high heat and humidity. So having those in there is not good for the birds, and it's a waste of your money as well.
We don't want to be doing that, particularly these days, wasting any money. So I'm going to visit you at Wild Birds Unlimited. I'm coming in, and I mentioned the things that I don't want to be doing. Let's talk about what are some of the things I'm doing. I come in, I'm going to talk to your expert staff. Give me some of the first suggestions for me as I get my birding venture underway.
The first thing we're going to suggest is a seed feeder because that's going to get you your biggest variety of birds the quickest. After that, we're going to recommend some sort of fat feeder. So a suet feeder, some bark butter bits. Those are going to be really enjoyed by things like woodpeckers and wrens, thrashers. And so once we have food taken care of, we also really like to encourage people to put out a water source. So a bird bath is important year round, not just when it's hot. Even when it's cold, those healthy feathers mean that the birds can stay warm. So clean feathers are really important all year round. And when we start diving a little deeper, we start talking about planting native plants and putting out brush piles, avoiding pesticides and other things you can do to help your backyard birds.
So for anybody who thinks, Wild Birds Unlimited, I can get bird seed there. They're all about feeding the birds. Obviously, you go beyond just bird food.
Yeah, so we're a nature shop and we specialize in backyard bird feeding, but we work very hard to source a lot of fun gift and garden items that are very popular this time of year. We source those from local vendors, made in America products, and fair trade products. So we work hard to make sure what we're bringing into our store serves a purpose and is environmentally friendly. And we sell a lot of other garden art and decorations too that people are looking to fill their yard with this time of year.
So eco-friendly, obviously important to everybody, but let me go back to that point that you hit, maybe expound on it a little bit. Wild Birds Unlimited, about feeding birds, taking care of birds, but you're more connecting people with nature?
Yeah, so we like to connect people with nature. I feel like birds are a gateway to caring about bigger things. Birds eat a lot of insects, a lot of caterpillars. So, how can your yard help that population grow as well? And I think that it starts with bird feeding, but it opens a door to bigger things.
Today on the Mount Pleasant podcast, we're doing a special edition, Growing with Mount Pleasant, talking to the owner of a business in Mount Pleasant. Small businesses make our community, they make our country, and Wild Birds Unlimited. And the owner of Wild Birds, the store owner, is Danielle Motley, joining me, Brian Cleary, today for this episode of Growing with Mount Pleasant on the Mount Pleasant podcast. Thanks so much for sharing a little time with us today. When we talk about birding, there's all kinds of different things, and your website has so much great information. Tell me, though, I wasn't aware of the term camera birding. What is camera birding?
So the camera products have gotten extremely popular over the last couple of years, and they've gotten better in quality too. So the camera birding is basically a bird feeder, birdhouse, or bath that actually has a camera built onto it. I think that people nowadays really love that because you get to see all the birds that have visited your feeder when you're at work or not at home or just don't have time to watch those feeders. Most of them are going to be solar powered. So once you get them set up, they're pretty low maintenance. I just put out a camera bird bath in my yard for the first time a couple of days ago. And it's been very exciting to see those birds close up. In a way, I don't get to see them otherwise.
Are there other things technologically? Because obviously, you know, we've moved from rotary phones to cell phones. And so what else technology-wise can I experience through Wild Birds Unlimited? And how is technology affecting birding today?
I think the biggest way technology is affecting birding is with those camera products. There's also a lot of apps that you can use to kind of help identify the birds that are in your backyard. We really like to promote Merlin, which is a free app through Cornell. And if you turn it on while you're outside, it will pick up the birds that it hears and tell you what's in your backyard. But I think one of the best parts about birding is that it hasn't gotten all crazy in tech. I mean, the joy of it is watching nature in your backyard, and that doesn't change with technology.
Are kids interested, do you think, in birding? Is it just an adult thing? Is there a way we could pull more kids in, maybe get them outside more, away from their screens?
Yes, I definitely think that kids enjoy birding. Our kids always stop to look out the doors and be like, oh, look, there's a yellow-rumped warbler. Look, the bluebirds are back. Anytime we recap our video footage from our camera birding stuff at the end of the day, they're always excited to see what's visited. I think that people can underestimate how impactful a bird feeder can be on your family and for your kids. So I definitely encourage families to put up a bird feeder and make it educational, but also just fun, a way to appreciate all that our backyards really can offer.
Now, you mentioned it before, just as you were getting into it, the fact you were living in an apartment. We talk about backyards and water and stuff like that, but talk to somebody who's in an apartment. Give me some hints in terms of, I live in an apartment, but I'd like to do birding. What is it that I should be doing?
So we've probably helped hundreds of customers who live in townhouses and apartments feed the birds. And honestly, once they get rocking and rolling, you would be so surprised at the variety of birds that you can get from your apartment. Even on a third-story balcony, we've had customers get the painted buntings, have wrens nest, put out a bird bath and have jays use it. So I don't think that people should be discouraged in feeding the birds if they live in an apartment. I do feel like when you live in such close proximity to other people, you need to be mindful in making sure that you're keeping your area clean. Those no mess blends become really important. It's discouraging whenever we hear that an apartment complex might put on a bird food, bird feeding ban just because somebody's not quite doing it right. So we really do like to help educate people on how to feed the birds without disturbing their neighbors.
So, Danielle, when I come to visit you, Wild Birds Unlimited in the Mount Pleasant Town Center by the Lowe's there, tell me something when I walk in the door that I may be really surprised to see in that store of yours.
I think you would actually be surprised at how All of our team members genuinely care about feeding the birds. They all do it at their own house. And if they didn't when they started, the hobby sucks you in. And so I think that people are always surprised at how knowledgeable our team is, but also how excited they are to actually help people set up their own feeding stations and share their own birding experience with them. It's a whole little community hub where bird nerds can come together and talk about their hobby.
Bird nerds, that was said with love, though, I could tell.
Absolutely.
So one thing I've mentioned is we talked about, hey, you want to attract birds. There is one side of birding that, hey, I don't want any grackles coming along to steal food. Any hints for things like that?
Yeah, so if we can't get people to just embrace them all, which we understand doesn't always happen, there are solutions for that. So grackles don't care for safflower seeds, so we could always change up our seed for a little while and help them move along. We also have a few feeders, caged ones that can keep out those larger birds, or weight-activated feeders that can close up on those larger birds. So we've got a few different solutions for keeping off troubled birds.
So at the end of the day, though, Danielle, if I'm looking for hummingbirds, if I'm looking for cardinals, some of the species, if I come into Wild Birds Unlimited, you're going to be able to point me in the direction that will hopefully allow me to attract those species?
100%. We really appreciate it when people come in with a mission, something particular they're looking to attract, because that's our job, is to be able to really pinpoint what's that cardinal's favorite food, favorite feeder, and how can we ensure that cardinals are definitely going to enjoy what you put out. And same with hummingbirds, which they're on their way. So we've got those questions rolling in.
I really want to be successful in my birding adventure, so point me in the right direction here. Let's be easy. So if I'm starting out, I don't necessarily have a bird in mind, but I want not to be discouraged. I want to be able to attract birds. Maybe give me a species that I should shoot for, and what's my first step when I go into Wild Birds Unlimited in setting that up with you?
If you come in, you want it easy, we probably will mention, are you concerned about squirrels? If those are an issue, we might go a squirrel-proof feeder route. But in general, what we're going to offer you is a seed blend feeder, just a hopper feeder or a tube feeder, something that can accommodate a wide variety of birds. And then more importantly, we're going to offer you our best bird food for that time of year. So we kind of change that up for the seasons. That's something we specifically choose to be the best bird seed for our particular area. And that's going to matter more than even your feeder will. We will talk about the birds that you want to attract and those that you don't, but most people want to attract cardinals, chickadees, titmice, woodpeckers, and often you don't even know what you're really wanting to attract until you start feeding them and really getting to see them and watch them come to your yard.
Danielle, is it hokey to say that bird watching can be healthy for me mentally? I just get that picture of relaxation when I'm watching birds.
Absolutely. I think there's been a lot of studies recently that show that bird feeding can calm your mind, ease anxiety. I think connecting with nature is really important. And at this time, it's kind of hard to, just go out on a nature hike. People are busy. And I think being able to take a few minutes and look outside at your feeders can give your brain that rest and connection that you need without having to go out on an all-day excursion.
So all the people that have been watching our podcast, they're coming in for your energy and obviously your passion for birding. When can they come to see you, and when can we visit Wild Birds Unlimited?
We're open 10 to 6 Monday through Saturday, and on Sunday we're open 1 to 5. That's our store hours, and we do a lot of events in store, so you can always check out our website or follow us on social media to find those events. But that's our regular store hours.
Do you have a social media platform preference, or you got them all covered?
Facebook and Instagram are where we're at. It's just at WBU Mount Pleasant.
It's something that you need to think about getting into if you're not already. So many people, so many of us love birds, birding, the place to go to do it, to be the expert though. Wild Birds Unlimited in the Mount Pleasant Town Center. Danielle Motley is the owner and our guest today on this special Growing Mount Pleasant edition of Mount Pleasant Podcast. Danielle, thanks so much for your time. Look forward to sharing some bird secrets.
Thank you. This was exciting, and thank you for having me.
It's just a wonderful opportunity for us to share with you all that's going on in Mount Pleasant, a special Mount Pleasant podcast edition. It's Growing with Mount Pleasant Magazine and me, Brian Cleary. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for listening or watching this special episode of the Mount Pleasant Podcast, your community, your podcast. Listen or watch past or future episodes at mountpleasantpodcast.com.